Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy. We're reading chapter 6 of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland called Pig and Pepper. If you remember, we left off in chapter 5 with Alice learning how to control her size because she met the caterpillar who told her about the mushroom, etc., etc. And now we're in a chapter called Pig and Pepper. So Alice ends up looking at a house. She's looking at a house and she's wondering what to do next. She remember by controlling her size, she adjusted her size so that she doesn't scare anybody in that house. You can go back and reread how tall she was and so on and so forth. Anyway, she gets there and she's in the woods. She considered, as she's watching, and suddenly a footman in livery. Livery is a uniform worn by a servant. You've seen these probably in older movies. They're very butlers wear them, livery, blah, blah. They're dressed in livery, and he came running out of the woods. And otherwise, judging by his face, she would have called him a fish, not a servant, but it looked like a fish to her. Remember, things are not always what they seem to be in Wonderland. He raps loudly on the door with his knuckles, and another footman, also in livery, there it is, you can see it right here, but this one had a round face like a frog. They were both footmen. So footmen usually traveled with coaches, etc. So Alice noticed that they both had powdered hair that curled all over their heads. So they're powdered hair. Powdered hair is what they used to do in England and Britain, and put a wig on or something like that when you're at court. In any case, they have powdered hair. And notice this, she was very curious. Remember, this whole story is about her curiosity and her transition as she learns about who she really is. She creeps out of the wood a little bit, and the fish footman starts out by producing a great letter from underneath his arm and says in a very solemn tone, for the Duchess, an invitation from the Queen to play croquet. Then the frog footman repeats it, but he changes the words a little bit. Notice the third person narrator who's telling us this is actually dictating how we should read this in our reading voice. So he says, the frog footman says, from the Queen, an invitation for the Duchess to play croquet. And then they both bowed and got their curls tangled up together. And Alice laughs at this so much, she has to run back into the wood for fear of their hearing her. Fear is going to be an important concept. Let me highlight that again. Fear. It's going to be an important concept as we think about Alice and her adventures. And she's been very afraid for the first 5, 6 chapters. And she's afraid now. She doesn't want to do anything. So she's afraid they'll hear her. So she runs back into the wood. And when she next peeped out, there's that beautiful word peeped, the fish footman was gone. And then the other footman, and we're going to continue to read in our next analysis. But before we do that, we got an email from a listener who asked if I could be so kind as to diagram the first sentence of this book. If you remember, Jimmy told you very early in this analysis that the first couple of sentences in a book, any story, are very, very important. And I did mention diagramming, I think, in one of the analysis, and I didn't want to belabor it because that's a whole nother story. But since this was a short introduction to chapter 6, Pig and Pepper, I decided I'm going to diagram the first sentence. Let's go to the next page. Well, don't be frightened. The first sentence is right here. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and having nothing to do, once or twice she peeped out into the book her sister was reading, but it had no picture. You remember this, right? In any case, the diagram of a sentence is really designed to help you understand the flow, parts of speech, pronunciation, all of the above. And there's no rules. You can Google, diagramming a sentence, And Google will give you many, 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 many pages to choose from. Templates. You can buy templates. I don't want to get you caught up in the weeds on this stuff, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to do. If you remember, we boiled down the first couple of sentences to say that Alice was tired. Remember that? So Alice here, and that little line separates the noun or the main clause here. Alice was tired. Beginning to get is a modification of the verb was tired, was beginning to get, you see. So you remember, language is designed to enrich. I want to get you away from the iPhones, from the Android phones, from the movies, from the video, and help you understand the English language, which is very rich in itself. It's very confusing. If you come from another country and you're trying to learn English, it's very confusing because English steals from other languages, starting with the Latin and the Greek and the Anglo-Saxon and so on. But in this case, Alice was tired. Alice was tired, beginning to get tired. So she was tired, but she was beginning to get tired. What she beginning to get tired of? Of sitting by her sister on the bank, of sitting on the bank. So these few words here modify of sitting by her sister. They go with that group of words there. You see, on, I don't know if I can highlight this stuff. Maybe I can. I can't. So of, on, those little words and, but, those are all connecting words that connect blocks of words. It's like, do you ever play with Lego? Or any kind of Lincoln Logs. When I was a kid, they had Lincoln Logs, erector sets where you build things, right? You're building things. Words are here, and when you diagram with words, you're building a structure of language. It has nothing to do with understanding or your reading voice, but it's a nice lesson. It's a nice, cute way of looking at words and how they relate to each other. So in this case, Alice was tired, blah, 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 and of having nothing to do. And there's that colon. Remember the colon that we talked about in our first escapade here? She had peeped. That's also part of here, that she had peeped into the book her sister was reading. So she had peeped. That's another complete thought. Alice was tired. She had peeped. Alice thought. Here's another one. So remember the four types of sentences: simple, compound, compound, complex, right? Those are the three types, and the compound, complex. Simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. What do you think this is? Yes, it's a compound, complex son of a gun, isn't it? Because you got simple sentences here. Alice was tired. She had peeped. Alice thought. Those are all simple, complete thoughts. But then you have all these other words hanging around that make it very compound and complex. So this is what that diagram looks like. If you were to diagram this sentence into this type of structure, you can do this with any sentence. I'm not encouraging you to do it, but I am encouraging you to think about it and practice it if you'd like to. Because all these words relate to each other. They enrich the language. They enrich what you read. They enrich the whole story, without which, no pun intended, it'd be very, very boring. And you don't need pictures or conversations like Alice was looking for. I'm going to give you a hint now. Your imagination is your greatest video recorder. Your imagination to look at the English language and pull out from it and interpret it with your own pictures, your own direction, your own ideas. Just like we talked about here with these footmen. We just read about the footmen. One looked like a fish. The other one looked like a frog. Fish and frog both begin with F. They're very simple words, but if you know how many different types of fish there are, what type of fish did you imagine? Now, if I were to tell you that it's basically the fish I imagined was a catfish, and you say, "Well, Jimmy, I don't like catfish. I thought it was a bass." Well, you're entitled to think what you want because you are the director of the words in your mind. You think these things through. You do, no one else. This is Jimmy, and you're reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland with Jimmy. My email is jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. We're reading Chapter 6, Pig and Pepper. See you soon.